In the world's most brutal prison, one man stood against corruption, cruelty, and death itself. His name is Riki, and this is how he turned hell into a war zone. Today's movie tells the story of a strong young man who enters the most dangerous place on earth, a prison ruled by a ruthless army of criminals. He's not there for glory or revenge, but to defend the weak and bring justice to those who've been wronged. Our story begins with a police van carrying a group of inmates, heading to one of the most feared prisons in the world, a completely isolated place that no one knows much about. As soon as the prisoners step out of the van for inspection, a 21-year-old young man named Riki-Oh stands out. He's sentenced to 10 years in prison for an accidental killing. While going through the metal detector, the alarm suddenly blares. The guards think Riki is hiding a weapon, but after searching him, they find nothing. Then they run him through the X-ray scanner, and what they see shocks everyone. 5 bullets are still lodged inside his body. The guards, stunned by what they saw, quickly allow him to pass through security. At the same time, an old man named Ma is quietly trying to stay out of trouble. He just wants to serve his time and see his wife and kids again. But out of nowhere, a group of heartless bullies attack him mercilessly. That's when Bray, the ruthless leader of the prison's underworld, steps in. He learns that Ma's request for parole has been approved, but instead of letting him go, Bray starts tormenting him without mercy. He grabs Ma's wooden toy and smashes it to pieces right in front of him. The old man begs him to stop, but Bray and his men beat him brutally until he collapses. Suddenly, Riki appears, like a ghost out of nowhere, and delivers a powerful kick straight to Bray's face, leaving him badly injured. When one of Bray's men tries to intervene, Riki glares at him and says, "You really think you can stand in my way?" The man freezes in fear and runs off like a terrified dog. The next day, Bray is furious and swears to make Riki pay. He calls one of the corrupt guards and tells him, "You'll get my monthly bonus if you fake that old man's release papers and take care of him." The next day, the corrupt officer approaches Ma at his workplace and tells him to meet behind the prison yard. There, the corrupt guard looked at Ma and said coldly, "Listen, old man, you're not getting out of here. Your release request has been canceled." The moment Ma heard that, he was devastated. All he ever wanted was to see his wife and children again, just once. But the guard had no heart. He lied to him, then started beating him mercilessly until the old man collapsed. That night, Ma sat alone in his cell, broken and hopeless. With nothing left to live for, he decided to end his life. All of it, the pain, the lies, the despair, was because of Bray, who had faked Ma's release and crushed his dreams. When news of Ma's death spread through the prison, a deep sadness filled the air. Everyone liked him. He was kind and gentle. But inside Riki, a storm of rage was brewing, one that could destroy the entire prison once unleashed. Later that night, 2 guards were ordered to take Ma's body and bury it. But as they walked through the rain, they saw a shadow approaching. It was Riki. He stepped into the courtyard, rain pouring over him, and broke the chains on his wrists with pure strength. Then, he picked up Ma's broken toy, handed it to his body, and said nothing. His silence was louder than words. After the guards left, Riki screamed into the night, his voice echoing through the rain, vowing to avenge Ma and bring justice to every innocent soul in that prison. The next day, inside the prison's mess hall, Riki sat quietly among the inmates. Meanwhile, Bray ordered his top fighter, Rogan, a massive muscle-bound monster, to finish Riki once and for all. The moment Rogan charged at him, Riki moved like lightning. With a single explosive punch, he crushed him to the ground, like smashing a potato. Seeing this, Bray tried to attack Riki from behind, but Riki caught him easily, like a rat in a trap, and shattered his bones without mercy. Finally, Riki had avenged Ma. The guards soon arrived, terrified of Riki's power. They locked him in solitary confinement, but even there, his legend grew. Half the prison already saw him as a hero. Even Rogan, the leader of the other half, respected him deeply for his unmatched strength. Inside the isolation cell, Riki's mind drifted back to his past, to when he was still a student. He remembered meeting his uncle, Chan, one of the wisest and most skilled martial arts masters alive. His fighting style was rare, almost mythical, a technique he discovered while fishing, inspired by the flow of water and the patience of nature. Chan tested Riki's skills, watching him move with speed and agility, but it wasn't enough. He told him, "You still lack control. To defeat your enemies, you must learn to feel their intent before they move." That night, Riki begged his uncle to teach him this ancient, forbidden technique. Chan finally agreed, and as Riki began his training, he felt his body awaken, charged with a power so immense it could split mountains. In training, Riki could even shatter a 1-kilogram brick without flinching. Uncle Chan was stunned. Riki had learned that rare fighting art in mere seconds and broke the heavy brick like it was nothing. Back in the prison, 2 guards burst in and cut short his concentration. They were led by Officer Dan Kamar, a cruel prison official who pulled up Riki's file. As the pages turned, Riki's harsh past unfolded. Raised in an orphanage, a lonely kid who failed at school and was disliked by his classmates. He later enrolled in university, then vanished for 2 full years. When the warden heard Riki had disappeared for a year, he suspected him of killing one of the city's biggest gang leaders. Dan tried to question him, but Riki ignored him, acting cold, untouchable, as if he'd gone mad. The warden didn't know how to handle him. Then a message arrived, a photo of Riki's sister. Dan held it up as bait, taunting Riki to come closer if he wanted to see it. Suddenly, Dan was betrayed, stabbed in the arm by an unseen hand. Riki felt his anger surge. For a moment, he almost gutted the officer like meat. In a flash of fury, he shattered everything around him. But when he saw his sister's photograph lying on the floor, something else took over. Bullets were fired at him, but Riki moved faster than thought. The cowardly officer fled. Riki walked away and returned to his cell, clutching that photo. Memories flooded back. The good days when they ran together. The days they laughed and stole paper kites to fly in sunlit fields. Meanwhile, trouble brewed elsewhere. A prisoner named Kran stumbled on the stairs and fell. Instantly, a crowd surrounded him. Whispers turned to shouts. Prisoners blamed him for Ma's death. They wanted blood. Kwang rose up, savage and merciless, vowing to tear Kran limb from limb. 18 pieces, he snarled. Then, like a phantom, Rumi appeared. He defended Kran fiercely, not because he cared, but because Rumi worked for Officer Dan as an informant. The confrontation escalated. Rumi stood toe-to-toe with the leader of half the prison. Shots rang out, and Rumi took a mortal wound. The warden was elated by the chaos. Rumi, wounded, went to meet Dan to learn what would happen next. Dan snapped orders. Riki was dangerous and fearless. He had to be eliminated quickly. They even handed deadly weapons to trusted men and set a plan in motion. Rumi took the weapon and moved into the yard. He climbed a massive column, a desperate public challenge, ready to make his stand. Kwang lay in critical condition, bleeding and shredded, a living wound exposed to the prison's wrath. Rumi lunged at Riki with savage, unhinged fury. He struck with the force of a man possessed, towering over him with swollen muscles and a body carved from violence. Riki didn't want to kill him, not at first, but then Rumi threw a handful of shattered glass straight into Riki's eyes. Riki collapsed to the ground, blinded and trapped, with no exit, no mercy. For a heartbeat, it seemed the darkness would swallow him. Then he slammed his palm into the concrete with a single seismic strike. The blow split the floor and water gushed up, flooding the yard. By some miracle, Riki's vision cleared. He wiped the blood from his eyes and rose to fight again. Rumi, seeing his chance, pulled a weapon and attacked with brutal intent. He charged like an animal, but Riki moved through him like a force of nature. The pent-up volcano of rage inside Riki erupted, bone cracked, muscle shattered, and Rumi fell broken. The prisoners roared. They had found a hero who actually stood for justice. Riki pointed at the carnage and shouted that the real villain was Officer Dan. The name spread through the ranks like wildfire. Prisoners surged toward the guards in a single furious wave, intent on tearing Dan apart. But before they could reach him, the notorious gang known as the Four materialized, 4 of the deadliest fighters in the prison. They cut through the crowd like knives, silencing the uprising before it could begin. Later, while Riki was quietly playing in the yard, he met a young inmate named Tuan, a small, fragile friend who'd once been targeted by Rumi. Riki tried to cheer him up by teaching him how to whistle with a leaf, to bring a little childish joy back into his life. But then, the horror was revealed. The prison officer had cut out Tuan's tongue. Tuan shattered, more wounded than ever, and stormed off. Riki decided to give Tuan his most treasured thing in the prison, his oud, the small lute he used to play. When Tuan received it, his happiness knew no bounds. Riki sat with him, playing and breathing life back into a broken moment. But trouble never slept. Tommy, a feared member of the Four and the boss of the West Wing, noticed Tuan handing contraband to Riki. Worse, Tommy had been tipped off to the hidden area where forbidden goods were grown and stored, the contraband den the inmates called the boats. The discovery hit him like a blow. Tommy resolved to stop them at any cost. When Tuan later faced Tommy, hoping to bargain or to save his own life, Tommy showed no mercy. He tore Tuan apart like a piece of meat, a brutal display meant to crush hope and remind everyone who ruled the prison. That night, the prisoners were horrified. Tuan's body was found mutilated beyond recognition. When Riki saw him, he instantly understood what had happened. Tuan was killed because he had revealed the location of the contraband hidden in the West Wing. Riki's eyes burned with rage. He picked up his oud, the same instrument he had given Tuan, and clenched it tightly. The time for vengeance had come. While Officer Dan and Tommy, the West Wing boss, were discussing how to get rid of Riki once and for all, Riki was already moving. He stormed through their operation, destroying everything in his path, setting fire to every stash of illegal goods in the West Block. When Dan learned what had happened, he completely lost control. If the prison chief found out that the contraband was gone, Dan's career and his life would be over. He immediately ordered Tommy to handle Riki himself. Tommy descended into the prison yard like a beast. The two men faced off in an all-out duel. From the start, Tommy unleashed a secret Japanese fighting style, striking Riki directly in the heart muscle. The impact was paralyzing. Riki's body froze, his heartbeat slowing dangerously. He had only 30 seconds left before his heart would stop. All around him, the prisoners gathered, shouting for him, urging him to fight. Their voices echoed in his mind like flashes of his past, every reason he ever had to survive. Then, like lightning, Riki exploded back to life. He moved faster than sight, delivering a silent, devastating blow that crushed his opponent. But before he could breathe, the rest of the Four arrived, surrounding him. At the same moment, the warden triggered the emergency alarm, a deadly order that meant every guard had permission to kill anything that moved in the yard. By sheer luck and unbreakable will, Riki escaped. However, as he was being recaptured, the guards sealed his cell with tons of wet cement, trapping him alive inside. Before the concrete hardened, Riki used his bare hands to bend the steel bars open and pulled one of the Four, who had been knocked out, onto his shoulder, saving him from certain death. Even after everything, it was clear Riki might be a monster in strength, but his heart was pure. Moments later, the cement solidified, freezing both men inside. The next morning, Officer Dan assembled the guards. Their cruel, arrogant warden was coming to inspect the prison himself. After a long wait, Warden Rogan, a man infamous for his corruption, arrived in a luxury car with his spoiled son. He had already heard about the chaos, the fires, the deaths, and the destroyed drug operation. Enraged, he ordered that Riki be brought to the torture chamber immediately. When he stepped inside, Rogan approached Riki slowly, ready to make an example of him. But before he could strike, Riki grabbed him by the throat, ready to crush the life out of him. Suddenly, from the shadows, a giant monster of a man emerged, the warden's personal bodyguard, and launched a brutal assault on Riki, pounding him mercilessly to the ground. In just a few seconds, the prison warden, Legacy, decided he'd had enough of what was happening. He wanted to crush Riki like a potato, so he dropped a massive iron weight on him. The pressure was unbearable, until suddenly, Riki unleashed a volcano of strength. He lifted the weight, shattered the entire cell, and broke free, ready to destroy everyone who stood in his way. But within a flash, like lightning, he fell straight into the warden's trap. Legacy then gathered all the prisoners and ordered them to bury Riki in the prison yard. While he was still alive, the inmates refused. They couldn't do it. Riki had always protected them. The moment the warden saw their defiance, he executed everyone who stood against him. Riki, barely conscious, told the others to just follow orders. It wasn't their fault. As they buried him, sadness filled the air. For 7 long days, without food or water, Riki remained buried alive. That night, he remembered why he ended up in this hellhole. His sister had been walking home one evening when a group of thugs chased her down. Trapped and terrified, she took her own life before they could touch her. When Riki found out, rage consumed him. He hunted down the gang leader responsible, but before he could reach him, the man fired 5 bullets straight into Riki's body. Yet Riki didn't flinch. Like an unshakable mountain, he stood tall and avenged his sister's death in an instant. 7 days later, the time came. Everyone thought Riki was dead, but suddenly the ground cracked open, chains shattered, and Riki rose again like a raging beast, ready to tear his enemies apart. The warden, Legacy, furious and desperate, threw him into the prison's torture chamber, known as the Banana Room. One of the 4 enforcers beat him mercilessly, but no matter what they did, Riki refused to break. So they tossed him into solitary confinement, left to rot like a dog. Starving and weak, Riki was on the edge of death when one brave inmate, known for his courage, secretly brought him food. He whispered that they were planning a prison uprising and told Riki to be ready, but a snitch betrayed them. The warden and his guards stormed in and killed the brave inmate on the spot. What they didn't know was that Riki was still there, watching, waiting. Like a shadow, he vanished from sight, only to strike from above like Spider-Man. He ambushed the warden and his men, wiping them out completely. And indeed, the uprising succeeded. Riki and all the prisoners rose together, facing Warden Legacy and his men head-on. At first, no one could stand in their way. They tore through every guard like a storm. But when they finally reached the warden and Tommy, the leader of the West Wing, everything changed. Tommy wasn't just another fighter. He was a true Japanese warrior, a master of the secret art of Anjutsu. He moved like lightning, taking down dozens in seconds. But when he faced Riki, that's when the real battle began, a clash between the ultimate Japanese assassin and the unstoppable beast. The warden watched the fight with twisted excitement, waiting for the perfect moment to step in. But soon he realized Tommy couldn't withstand Riki's fury. That's when Riki unleashed one of his deadliest techniques, a Chinese spiral strike, tearing through his opponent and ending the fight instantly. Now, only one man stood in Riki's way, the tyrant himself, Warden Legacy. It was time for the final showdown. The moment the fight began, something insane happened. Straight out of a sci-fi movie, the warden started transforming into a hideous monster. Even though his strength multiplied, it didn't matter to Riki. Nothing could stop him. In seconds, Riki obliterated him, ending his reign of terror once and for all. As the dust settled, Riki stood before the prison's massive concrete wall. He gathered every ounce of his legendary power, and with one earth-shattering punch, he broke through the wall, freeing himself from the hell he'd been trapped in.